Welcome back to the Peace Offering Kitchen. Today we are going to make a butternut squash gratin. So that means I'm basically going to make tiny layers of butternut squash with cheese in the middle of it. And I'm also going to throw in some red onion. I'm going to start by making the cheese layer so that it's ready. And I want to point out that you can use any cheese that you like. Today I'm going to use a ricotta cheese mixed with a raw jack cheese. But you can use any cheese you like. In fact, I have never made this dish with ricotta before. I just want to today, so we're gonna try it. So I'm gonna start by taking this 8 ounces of ricotta, mixing in this 8 ounces of shredded cheese. This is a raw Monterey Jack cheese. And then to it, I'm gonna add this thyme that I just harvested from the garden. I'm not even going to bother chopping it up because these thyme leaves are so tiny. So I'm just going to try to pull them off the stem and then I'll mix it all together. So for this dish today, I have a special tool that I like to use. This is a julienner. And basically what you want to do is create as thin of a slice as possible. This is just going to be able to maximize your flavor and sort of the delicateness of this dish. And so I'm going to use this tool because it helps me to slice things super thin. But if you don't have this tool, you can always use a knife and just do the best that you can. So to this, I'm adding the herb thyme, but you can use whatever herb you like. I just walked down to the garden. This was the first thing I saw, and I thought it would taste delicious with the butternut squash. But you could add parsley, you could add no herbs, or you could add dried herbs if you wanted to. I want you to think about what would taste the best to you and make that dish. All right, now I'm gonna stir this all up with a spoon and then I'm gonna set it to the side. I think I'll also season it, making a huge mess, with salt and pepper because ricotta can be quite bland. But if you were using, let's say, a cheddar or a Gruyere, which I've used in the past in this dish, then you would not need to season the cheese. So I'm just gonna season it lightly with salt and pepper. And then give it another good stir. So it would be easier to use only shredded cheese so you could sprinkle it over the top. But I, of course, like to make things difficult. And since this is going to be more of a clumping situation, I'll just put dollops of cheese as the layers in between the butternut squash. All right, this is nicely mixed in. I'm just gonna set it off to the side and start slicing up my vegetables. All right, the next thing I'm gonna do is get the skin off of these butternut squashes. And this is gonna be the most annoying thing you do. So let's just get started. First, we're gonna cut off the bottom and the top and then compost those. Then you can see here that butternut squash has like a neck and then this fat part here. So basically what I'm gonna do is cut the neck off. So the neck doesn't have seeds, the bottom part does. Also, this is straight and easier to peel while this is rounded and more obnoxious to peel. So I like to do this with my knife. I just take it and cut the sides off with my knife. Now this is somewhat trickier. You have to sort of cut at an angle, so that's why I separated it. So first, I'm cutting out at an angle. So now I'm gonna flip it over and do the same thing to this angle. So just cutting the top off. Then you just sort of need to look around and see, are there any pieces that you missed? Nope. Okay, perfect. Now I'm going to cut this in half because it'll be really challenging to get the seeds out without that. Composting here, all of these peels. And now I'm going to take my spoon and scrape out these seeds. Okay, I'm going to scrape out this other one into the compost pile as well. Or you could save these seeds and plant them. All right, now I'm going to cut up my other squash. Okay, the next thing I'm gonna do is peel these onions. So I start by cutting off the bottom and the top, and then try to peel down the sides. It would be great if I could keep this whole. That way when I slice it on the julienner, I can get full circles. All right, now for the fun part. We are gonna start slicing up these vegetables. So I have here my julienner, and I'm going to take this butternut squash and start to run it on this machine here. So as you can see, this is starting to make beautiful little slices of butternut squash. So this really makes quick work of slicing vegetables. But word to the wise, once you get that low, just stop. I have sliced off so many tips of my fingers, and it is not worth it. All right, next we're gonna do the same thing with the onions. So this actually has a handy little gripper here, which I might use. It's a lot easier. And the second one. Okay. Voila. All right, now for the fun part of assembling it. I am gonna start by making a layer of this butternut squash. All right, and also a layer of onions. And then I'm going to season each layer with salt and pepper. So you want each layer to be incredibly flavorful. And the salt is actually going to help the onions soften as well, which will be nice. Now at this point, if you had your shredded cheese, you would sprinkle it over the top. I am going to start clumping mine. So just making dollops of cheese about. Maybe a little bit more. And this is when you can be creative with how cheesy you want your dish to be. I, of course, want mine to be ridiculously cheesy, so I'm gonna add a lot. All right, and then I'm just gonna continue with that same layering pattern until the whole casserole dish is filled. Butternut squash is such a great thing to grow because it keeps for so long. And it's one of the things that is still abundant in the garden, even in the fall. All right, we will add our onions. You can also skip the onions. My children prefer if I make this dish without the onions. All right, now I will season with salt and pepper. It is very important not to skip this step. I've definitely made this without seasoning each individual layer, and I regretted it. Now for more cheese. I'm going to do a third layer. This does not have to be perfect because it's all going to get baked. The cheese will be on top, and it doesn't really matter how it looks. So this is my last layer of onions. I will season. And then I'm going to add the remaining cheese to the top. Just kind of break it up a little bit so it's evenly coated. All right, now I'm going to pour a little bit of heavy cream over the top of this. This is going to help it really come together when it bakes. You could use milk if you didn't have heavy cream. And then I'm going to take little dollops of butter and put it over the top. And this will help it caramelize over the top and just, of course, be that much more delicious. All right, now I'm going to take and put this in an oven that's preheated to 400 degrees, and it's going to cook for about 45 minutes. Oh, and there we have it, bubbling. So beautiful. You want to wait until this cools before you start to cut it up because it will all just sort of run out now. But if you wait for it to stop sizzling and let it get just warm instead of hot, you can cut it into perfect squares. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.